gardening, starting organic gardening, and just really kind of getting acclimated. So in the first call, we talked about like seeds, soil, and just all these different things. And if you haven't heard it, definitely go back and listen to it. It's already in the show notes below this call, so you can listen to the full interview. But basically, we just talked about you want to make sure you're getting heirloom seeds. You want to make sure you're getting the seeds that are in your geographic zone. And you want to make sure that you're just getting started. I know we kind of talked about that briefly, but just really just going out and planting something, and you're going to mess up. A plant's going to die. It's not the end of the world. It goes back into the earth and composts, and we're all going to live. We also talked about the 3 easiest foods to begin gardening with, and that is tomatoes, cucumber, and some type of green leafy vegetable. So if you haven't really gardened before, start with tomatoes, cucumbers, and a green leafy vegetable. And we talked a little bit about growing indoors, how you can grow herbs and sprouts and things like that indoors. And that's just kind of a great way to get started growing indoors if you don't have land or something like along those lines. We also talked about, let's see, we did talk about GMOs and Monsanto and lots of other stuff. And if you really want to hear that call, just go back and listen to it. But today I want to focus on more advanced gardening techniques and really just kind of get an understanding for what you can do and how you can grow your garden and create something, once again, immaculate. I love that word. And use it to, create breakfast, lunch, and dinner in your backyard, basically, which is eco-friendly, it's green, it's healthier, it's sustainable, and it's awesome. So, Carolyn, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that. What is on the menu for today as far as gardening is concerned? What are we going to extrapolate? What are the listeners gonna learn today?
I wanted to talk a little bit about the different kinds of gardens you can have. There's like kind of 3 main kind of gardens, so I wanted to talk a little bit about that.
Okay, cool. What are the 3 different types of gardens?
Okay, so there's the in-ground garden, which is basically just, you plant the seeds in the ground. And then the second one would be raised bed gardening. And the third one is container gardening.
Okay.
So those are like the main 3.
Is raised bed and container, what's the difference between those 2 visually? So
visually raised beds are basically like those, you see them they made them out of wood, and they're like 4 feet long, and they're just like a foot or 2 above the ground. Those are bigger, and then the containers are just any kind of pots.
Okay, so the container.
So raised bed is like a big bed on the ground of soil that's just raised above the ground.
Gotcha. Is there a reason? Well, I guess we'll get into this, but in ground, the first one is just in the ground. What is the benefit of that, and why would someone choose that over the other 2?
Yeah, I actually would recommend that would be like the last one I would recommend, because it has a lot of downfalls, but you can do that. And the reason why I would say to probably not do that one is because you have to work a lot on the soil. That's why I would recommend the raised beds over the in-ground, because with the raised beds you can amend the soil and make it really nice, whereas in the ground you can't really amend the soil too much. It's just kind of whatever the soil is. So sometimes the plants won't do as well with the in-ground ones. So.
Gotcha. So with basically with the raised bed garden, you have more control over the health of the soil, so the plant grows better.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha. And is the raised bed an actual? I've seen raised bed pictures on your page before, but is it an enclosed box with the bottom, or is it just the sides that kind of lift it up?
Yeah. What you do is you basically just build it however you want. Like there's so many different things you can do, but most people just take wood, slabs of wood, and then they make a rectangular shape, nail them together. So it's like just a rectangle on the ground of wood, and then you just put your organic soil in the box. And
okay, so it is like a box.
So it's basically like how you put it, the roots are going to grow. Some people, they don't put it too high, and then some of the roots will grow into the ground. But I like to do it so that it's high enough so that you have all just totally your own new soil,
Right. So my question is so it is a box and there is a bottom piece of wood going along the earth?
No, you don't put a piece of wood You can do that, but most people don't do that. You could put some kind of barrier, like a weed barrier. A lot of people do that. Maybe like some newspaper or something, maybe even sturdier than that.
Gotcha. Or you said leaves as a barrier?
Yeah, you can use leaves.
Okay.
You can use like cloth. You can use wood.
Okay, gotcha.
But
and
yeah,
a little barrier kind of helps the,
it helps with
the new soil. It helps
yeah,
the new
because
soil.
you're gonna.
Go
sorry.
ahead.
It helps if you're gonna be growing above the lawn. Like there's weeds in the lawn, so if you just if you have some kind of barrier, it'll help the weeds not to come through.
Okay, gotcha. And then it just kind of keeps that soil top, okay.
Yeah, so if you put down newspaper, what happens is, or something even a little heavier, if you leave that down, say like put newspaper down and put some rocks or something heavy over it, what'll happen if you leave that for a couple days, the grass will die pretty much, or it'll, so that's a good idea. That way you won't have to deal with the grass coming through the soil.
Or you can just use leaves. I would prefer leaves personally, because
I think leaves would be a lot better. That's more natural.
Yeah, and I don't want like ink in my tomatoes.
Exactly. Yeah, I like.
That wouldn't be cool, Robert Frost.
Yeah.
Horrible joke. Anyway, a small percentage of listeners will get that one, and I don't even get it still, so it's okay if I don't get it. Moving on. So leaves. Okay, so you're kind of separating. You're separating your organic soil from the earth so that you can give the plant what it needs. And then as time goes on, will it kind of break that barrier and the roots will kind of go into the earth still?
Yeah, what'll happen is it will kind of just be naturally composting, and it'll just kind of naturally do its own thing, and the soil up below it will turn healthier. And then if depending on how the plant is, it will grow deeper. But usually plants, they don't have that long. The ones that you're going to be growing, if you're growing food, they're not going to be growing all year round, so the roots won't grow that deep, unless you're growing trees or fruit trees and stuff like that. You have to do more planting for that.
Okay, so out of the three, the in-ground, container, and raised bed gardening is your number one recommendation.
Yeah, I would say if you can, I think the raised beds are great, but a lot of people maybe they don't want to put that much work in with building the beds, and maybe they don't have a yard, so that's why the container gardening is really nice, because you can just put soil in a container or pot, and you're good to go.
Mm-hmm. So the container gardening that's just kind of basically what you make of a container and into a garden, basically. Is that kind of what that is?
Yeah, so it's basically just you can find whatever kind of containers will hold soil. You can get really creative. A lot of people just use recycled objects, and you can design your stuff really cool or whatever you want to do. Or you can just have all the same kind of pot, and then you just put your organic soil in there, and that's it. So it's pretty simple. And then that way you can move your plants around. Like say if you move somewhere, you can move your pots with you, or you can move the plants. If they're not getting enough sun in one spot in your yard, you can just move the pot over. Whereas with raised beds, you can't move that, and in the ground you can't move that either. So that's why the containers have more. They have some advantages too.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's kind of cool. I didn't really think about it. I've seen a lot of container gardening pictures with your wild gardening Facebook page, but and it does look kind of cool. People make them really creative, and use recycled objects, and they even hang them on walls and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, being able to move that. So if you live kind of in a metro area, the city, or you don't have much room, it seems like container gardening would probably be a good choice.
Yeah.
Kind of have that ability to grow, wherever, and to move it.
Exactly.
Which is cool. And then in-ground gardening is basically, I guess, the old school way of doing it.
Yeah, it's the old school way. I've done a lot of that, but it's been a bit frustrating, and then I just kind of decided, hey, I'm not doing that anymore, because you need to amend the soil, because if you want to have really good quality plants, you need to make the soil great. So a lot of people will be, impatient. They'll be like, oh, I just want to start. I know I've been like that before. You get the seeds in, and you're so excited. You're just let's just till up the ground and just put them in there. But what happens is you make a lot more work for yourself later on because you're going to have problems with weeds and insects and all kinds of stuff because you didn't work on the soil first. So that's why I recommend to people, I know you guys are excited to get started, but it's better to do a little bit of planning before.
Right. What kind of planning before exactly would you recommend?
Just kind of the basic planning would be, the main thing would be the soil, planning the soil. Collecting the soil, you're going to need a good amount of soil, organic soil. So you can scout out areas. Maybe there's even places where they're willing to give soil for free or things like that, But most of the time you're going to have to buy the organic soil. And then you're going to want to look at where you're going to be growing and see how much sunlight you're going to be getting, things like that. Like say you have just a balcony, you have to make sure that you're going to get at least 6 hours of sun. Same with your yard. You want to look and see what areas get sun. If there's a tree, you're not going to plant under that tree, things like that, because those little things.
Right. Okay. So that's a good tip too. Knowing that your plants need approximately 6 hours of sunlight. So maybe for those of you getting started, maybe if you're thinking about growing, either in-ground container or raised bed garden, maybe put stick something in the ground and then see when the sun hits it, and then watch it for that day, and then see when the sun goes off that object, so you can see within that kind of general area if it gets 6 hours of sunlight that day, just so you have a good idea and feel for it. Because that's a good tip, just knowing how much sunlight the plants need. One question I had for you was, you've mentioned amend the soil a few times. What exactly does that mean, and how do you do that, and what are the benefits of that?
Okay, so amending the soil basically just means making it the best you can. So you're going to be basically when you want to start with a compost pile, and you're going to start to create an amazing compost there. So when you amend the soil, what you're doing is you're adding in compost. So that's adding nutrients to the soil, it's adding life, oxygen to the soil. There's going to be natural insects in there that are going to help to create a healthier soil environment. So when I say amend, that's what I mean. You're going to just want to nurture the soil, make it the best you can. So if you think about this, in the soil, in the ground, it's just how it is. Maybe it has, maybe it's really hard and things like that. But when I say amend the soil, you can make it really soft. You can go through there with a pitchfork and make it, fluff it up, that kind of thing. So, but when you're starting with the soil, you want to get organic soil from the store, and that's already going to be really good quality. But then as you put those in your raised beds, but you're going to want to keep amending the soil as you go through the season, and you're going to want to add your compost to it to amend it and make it healthier, add nutrients,
Okay, so is amending the soil different than tilling?
So tilling the soil means when you till it up, when you go get a tool like a rototiller or a shovel or that kind of thing, a rototiller, and you just go through, the soil is just ground, and then you go through and you till it up. You till up the grass and move all the soil around like that. But it's a lot of work to do that. So that's why I'm saying the raised beds are so much easier, because you don't need that much room for growing your plants. So compared to going through all this hard labor and tilling up the land, you can just go have your raised bed, put the organic soil in, and it's already really good quality soil,
Right, and it's less work, which for me, being a lazy individual, is very I'm just kidding, listeners. I exercise at least once a day. I walk. So awesome. Okay, so amending the soil. So amending the soil is basically, if you're kind of you're basically mixing compost with the soil to really bring it to life.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's it's basically it's like feeding your body. You feed your body good food. You want to feed it, you want to feed your plants good soil. So you have your compost pile over in the corner of the yard, and you're making its food, its supplements,
Right. Yeah. Okay.
It's kind of like supplementing.
Right. Yeah. You're giving the soil that life to give your plants life, because ultimately the health of the soil determines the health and nutritional value of the plants.
Yeah. Right.
It's important because you're eating them. So amending the soil is definitely an important kind of lesson, and so for organic soil and or do you just start composting?
You can buy compost at the store, so if you want to just start, if you don't have a compost pile started, you can just go get compost. I recommend getting organic. If you can't, that's okay, but, it's best to get organic because you don't want the soil to have been sprayed with chemicals. Right. So, and then what you're going to do is, you can get a little bit of compost, get some organic soil, and then you're going to start your own compost pile, and then that way you won't have to buy compost again because you'll always have a big supply of your own compost, and it will be a lot better than the kind at the store anyways, so.